morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters by Anfield Index. It was late, it was dramatic, it involved tops coming off, it involved a lot more chatter afterwards as well, but Liverpool got the job done yesterday at Leicester and relegated them to the Championship for next year. But in the more immediate future, one more win, contracts, transfers, there's a million things to talk about. And as ever, I've got the renowned and the respected David Lynch to join me to walk us through it all. And just yesterday, if you're being honest, David, was there a point where we were battering that goal, we were under siege and hitting the woodwork and everything that was happening? Was there a bit of you was thinking, is this going to happen?
Yeah, definitely. I think I texted a mate around 70th minute or so to kind of say, actually, I'm a little concerned that they're maybe not going to find a breakthrough here because, I was pretty relaxed about it during the game up to that point, really, in terms of, I saw a little bit of kind of criticism at halftime of how Liverpool were playing and that kind of ramped up as the game went on. But, I just didn't really agree with it, to be honest. I know, obviously, the finishing wasn't there and the cutting edge wasn't there, and that is something that's part of football, and you should be criticised if it isn't going right. But I thought, in terms of kind of dominating the game, creating chances, preventing Leicester from doing absolutely anything, Liverpool were doing that really, and kind of really, Leicester weren't unlucky to lose the game in the way they did. They were kind of very lucky that it wasn't 3-0 by half time and that Liverpool weren't absolutely cruising in the game. So, I thought Liverpool were doing everything right, really, and just banging the door down. And obviously, it took a little while for that goal to come in the end, and you do get a little bit nervous that maybe it's going to be one of those days. But in reality, even saying that, it kind of felt that Liverpool would get the goal in the end because Leicester were doing absolutely nothing. Liverpool were dominating completely, and they were creating chances. So you just felt that eventually one of those would go in, and of course it did in the end, and that secured the victory fairly comfortably in the end.
Yeah, no doubts about it at all. And I mean, the tops came off. It was an epic moment, and there's plenty to talk about around this moment as well. But with that moment, is that almost a better way to win it than the 7-0 drubbing it probably should have been, as the stats suggested and the chances missed? Is it sometimes just better? And you saw the travelling cop. Maybe that was just fitting for this occasion.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes these ones are nice, aren't they? When you kind of you nick it late on, and when you've had to really work for it and keep the concentration up and keep going and really grind it out, and probably more fitting for this type of Liverpool team as well. I think under Jurgen Klopp, maybe they would have just completely blown them away. Whereas in this one, it's a little bit more of slot football, controlled, and just keep knocking down the door till it eventually gives way. So. Maybe it was fitting in that regard. And I think, having that big moment of celebration would have been really good for everybody inside the ground as well. So, it was, I suppose a 7-0 win is great and good fun, and we all would have loved that. But I think, any win's a win, isn't it? And they've got themselves over the line in the end there. And like I say, probably suited to the type of football Liverpool are playing at the moment.
Yeah, Ryan Gravenberch talked this morning about how it was about the result. That's all that really matters. And that probably feeds into that as well. And this moment, I mean, I can't believe I'm actually saying this to you, but I'll have to bring in a rumour around a tour guide at Anfield. I'm sure you clocked it. That story, the celebration, the interview afterwards, everything was, being speculated on yesterday. Do you think people are just reading too much into the celebration, though?
Yeah, I would say so, to be honest. Not had any indication it's going the other way at the moment. And I did see that about the tour guide and those suggestions. I wouldn't say that tour guides are probably the closest to the club in terms of what's happening with the contracts or signings or anything like that, to be honest. So, don't kind of put much heed on that one, really. But I think what you saw really with the celebration is that, it means an awful lot to him. He does love Liverpool. I think this is the thing that people can't seemingly understand. But, personally, I kind of get it. And you can love Liverpool and yet want to kind of go and try something new and try a new country and try just a new life experience completely, particularly when you've won absolutely everything there is to win here. You you can be a Liverpool supporter and think that. I think because I could see myself in the same situation, thinking the same thing of like, I want to go and try this. I don't want to let this opportunity go. And you only get one crack at life and one crack at your career. So why not give it a go? But that doesn't mean he doesn't like Liverpool, or he doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to win trophies for Liverpool. He doesn't love the fans. I don't think it means any of that. So I think what we saw in his celebration was kind of a reflection of that, really, that this still means a load to the player, and it's still really important to him. And he was delighted to score that goal. So I don't think it's going to, create a U-turn or anything like that. And I think his post-match interview was probably more in keeping with the tone of what's happening. But it was it's a big let-off for him, and a big moment for him, and a big moment for the supporters as well. And it's good to see that kind of. I think he got a mixed reception when he came on, a few boos, but also his song was sung as well. So real mixed reception, but there was absolutely nothing mixed about the way that people celebrated that goal or kind of celebrated with Trent at full time. And it just gives you hope that maybe it can be left on good terms, or as much as you possibly can when it's a situation where a player's leaving on a free. But like I say, it's kind of a load of contradictions in there, and it's a strange situation, but that is just what it is at the moment.
I mean, in terms of, like you say, the contradictions and the strange situation, there's probably nothing that steers into more than that when he's asked about the future, as you said, post-match, and he says, I've told everyone I'm not going to speak on that, when he actually is kind of now speaking on it, and the silence is deafening for a lot of people. Did that really answer it for you? I think that's for a lot of people, like, that removes doubt. This is done. He's going. What's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah, I took from that interview. I mean, at the end of the day, if he was staying, it was even in his mind. He could just come out and say that, couldn't he? He just isn't thinking that. He clearly wants to go, and that's the kind of expectation of everyone around the club at the moment. So, he could have just come out and shot that down. But what he is doing, I think, is delaying it. And I think we're going to get public confirmation when it gets to the point that Liverpool have maybe won the title. Now, that starts a debate in itself, by the way, about kind of what do you do. Do you need to play him? Is there any point in playing? I'm of the view that you don't, and I know Jamie Carragher spoke about that, and I thought he was right to say that, really. So, but yeah, I don't think it's made any difference what happened yesterday, and I don't, like I say, I think people reading into that probably setting themselves up for a little bit of a disappointment, to be honest.
Yeah, probably. We all know what's going to happen when it gets announced. That's maybe another topic. And another topic that you kind of mentioned into there, that Jamie Carragher's comments, a lot of people stepped into those. Some saying, no, he's the best player, he's got to start. Some on the other side going, no, Conor Bradley's going to be the number one fullback. You've got to give him his head. You've got to give him more experience, minutes, etc. I know you're a big fan of Conor Bradley, like many of us are, and big believer he can step into that number one right back role, if you want to call it that. Yeah, yesterday there was kind of ups and downs with that. I thought he struggled a little bit at times with Mavididi. There were some good moments going forward. Are you still a firm believer that he can be that number one right back? And it's too far to say, or too mean to Conor Bradley to say he's going to step into Trent's shoes, because Trent's like a unicorn and that type of player. But real hope that Conor Bradley can become a solid right back and starter for Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he did have a couple of moments where Mavididi kind of had the better of him, but I think we've got to accept that. I know we're going from Trent, where he just gets scrutinised so much, but it's not like the next guy who comes in at right back is never going to get beaten ever in any match. It's going to happen. Mavididi's not a bad dribbler, and these things are going to happen from time to time. It's all about kind of, can you cover that off from time to time? Can your centre half come out and kind of extinguish the danger? So, I don't think we can look at that game yesterday and start thinking, oh, well, actually Conor Bradley's not that great defensively, because that is definitely not the case. So, you got to kind of take that for what it is, really. And, I just think he's good enough. He isn't going to do the things that Trent does in terms of his passing range. But I think he said on commentary yesterday, and I totally agree with this, actually, that, his way of getting the ball forward is that he drives with it. He's a dribbler. He drags you forward in that way, and that's it. That's the difference there. He will get you forward. He will offer you progression, but in a totally different way. I do still think you're going to have to find some of those Trent passes from other parts of the pitch, other bits of progression from other areas to kind of, so you can collectively kind of cover up the absence of Trent. But there's no question in my mind, if you were looking for someone like to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold in this in this market. Conor Bradley, if he played for somebody else, will be near the top of your list because he's only in his early 20s. He's got a lot of experience under his belt, and he's already a very, very good player. So yeah, for me, I would like to see him be the one that replaces Trent Alexander-Arnold, albeit Liverpool are going to have to get some cover for that right-hand side. And whether they just do that as a direct right-back or they sign a centre-half who can play right-back or whatever they do in that situation, they're going to need someone. But I think Conor Bradley should be starting next season as first-choice right-back. That's my view, and because I just think he's good enough.
Will be interesting to see what happens, especially in the market whether it's a big summer or not. We'll be talking about that shortly as well. But maybe one of the people we should be talking about, and Mo Salah, Player of the Year, sensational. That one more to the travelling cop afterwards as well. You just wonder, though, and I say this with Mo Salah being my favourite player, him and the other forwards might just be on finishing drills in training this week. It could and should have been about 5 or 6, shouldn't it, yesterday?
Yeah, so some of the chances he missed were crazy. I mean, even Salah, you think he's usually so deadly, and he has been all season. Just maybe his luck's out a little bit at the moment as well. I mean, I think part of this drought he's kind of been on recently was because he's really missed having a right back next to him. And I know we've discussed that before. And then all of a sudden he's back in games now that that he has got an orthodox right back playing alongside him. It's finding ability to get shots off, and for some reason they just all keep hitting the post and not going in. So he's been a bit unlucky. What I think it does emphasize, though, really, is that when he isn't firing, when he isn't getting the goals, that support cast is just not quite there in terms of level, is it? We saw it. It's the same thing as we saw last season, and I get why people are going, oh, this is fatigue or whatever. But actually what happened last season was that Salah's form dropped away because he got that injury. And when he came back, he couldn't quite get it going. And as soon as that happened, the guys around him didn't step in to fill the void. And then Liverpool's attack started to look really sticky, and they couldn't get the goals towards the back end of the season. So, fatigue was an issue last season with the injuries collectively that they had. I think that did play a part. But how it manifested itself partly was that the attack just kind of fell apart. And we're seeing something similar this time, is that Salah's form is just, in the last few games for various reasons, has just dipped off a little bit. And nobody's stepping in to kind of fill the void, really. So for me, I think it just really emphasizes the point that whole attack and the way it's comprised, they probably just need to retool it so that one more of those is an absolutely undeniably world-class starter who, can get the goals in the absence of Salah, will absolutely step up. And, don't want to be too harsh on the attack, by the way, because they've been the top scorers in the Premier League. They've been fantastic for most of the season. But I still think you can kind of see why Arne Slot's looking at it and think, I actually want to rip this up and start again a little bit. And there could be big changes to that attack, or certainly that's what we kind of expect going into the summer.
I mean, even yesterday, Jota is on the bench, which we can talk about shortly as well, but he misses one, the cross from Szoboszlai, maybe the diving header. You give him a bit of leverage with that because that's difficult. There's one that Salah puts to the back post that he should bury, no two ways about it. Gakpo probably has one where he should do better, but that's just the way it's going. It's lacking. If it's not Salah, no one else is stepping up in that attack, are they?
That's it. And you think with Jota as well that he has been typically for Liverpool kind of finishing ahead of his XG and is deadly in front of goal. But you're even losing that little bit of his game recently, which is a bit of a concern, because if he doesn't offer that, he's not incredible in build-up. So, you need him to be putting his chances away. So, that one, the header you talk about there, the one late on from Salah, he has to put that away. That is, for his standards, I was just thinking the net is going to bulge here. He's going to put this away. So pretty shocked that he didn't. But that's been kind of the story of his season, really. He's not been finishing at his usual level. So, and again, it just kind of emphasizes, doesn't it, that these players haven't kind of stepped up where Salah's fallen a little short recently. And I would just expect big changes in the attack this summer, and I think fully justified, despite the fact that Liverpool have been fine in that regard for much of the season. It's just an area of the squad that you could see could do with a little bit of strengthening.
Which probably steers in a little bit the starting team. Now, this is really important to say, because I think we've always thought like strongest lineup till the end of the season, get it won. Are we now possibly considering the opinion that maybe Diogo Jota and Andy Robertson aren't necessarily in what Arne Slot views as his starting strongest lineup right now?
Yeah, I just think he's maybe taking decisions on the basis of performances, which, you know, every manager, we want to see them do that, don't we? He's kind of looked at, you know, Tsimikas did well, I thought, against West Ham, and Liverpool didn't do so well once he came off, and Robertson wasn't great when he came on. So it's just a kind of pure selection decision, I guess, on the basis of what he's seeing in training. And, you know, while you've got these options, you're entitled to do that. And again, you know, Jota hasn't been incredible, has he, since he's come back in? So, you know, okay, you can make the case that the best football Liverpool probably played all season was with Diaz in that false nine role. So I guess these are just kind of, selection decisions that the manager's making. And, you know, at the end of the day, he does get, performance-wise, it is kind of there for Liverpool yesterday. So he'll feel like he was justified in doing that. And I guess that's what it's all about for the manager, is on the basis of what he sees in training, what he sees in matches, is making those big calls. I don't think it says anything about the kind of futures of these players, by the way, in terms of, I still expect that it would be Costas who goes out of the two left backs this summer. But like I say, it's just a kind of selection decision around this game. And I thought the right one again as well. I thought Tsimikas did well.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he did have a decent game, nearly scored as well yesterday. But a man that didn't even get a chance to have a shot, wasn't even on the bench, Chiesa. And people reacted differently to this. Was this any surprise to you? Are we almost just now saying people like him, he's become a bit of a cult figure because of the way he gets shots, and he's obviously got a pedigree. Arne Slot does just not fancy Federico Chiesa, does he?
Yeah, it's just as simple as that, really. I mean, I kind of wrote a piece recently saying, you know, you look at his performance in the final against Newcastle when he comes on, he's, you know, generally had a few bright moments for Liverpool, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the manager sees him week in, week out in training, and is having a look at him in direct comparison to the likes of Núñez and Jota, and not really liking what he sees. And, you know, when that's the case, and we're talking about a manager who's going to win the league at the first attempt here, you've probably got to say that, you know, you trust his judgment, and he's probably getting this one right. You know, I think way too much is being read into that 10, 15 minutes at Wembley. He was very good, don't get me wrong. I thought he did brilliantly when he came on and took his goal really well. But it's just such a small thing that we're getting an insight into there. You know, clearly when they're playing these games in training and they're all playing together, he's just not reaching the same level as the others. And when that's happening, you can't just give him your place in the squad for no reason. You can't just give him minutes for no reason. So it's a shame it's not working out, because everything I hear about him behind the scenes is he's, you know, really good in terms of his attitude to his work, doesn't shirk anything, a brilliant guy around the place who kind of everyone behind the scenes wants to see succeed, but you've just got to acknowledge it isn't going to happen. And like I said, I don't quite understand the strength of the furore around kind of why is he not playing, like in terms of like top 5 important things for Liverpool at the moment. This is right near the bottom. It just doesn't matter, does it? And clearly the manager's never going to come out. People are kind of say to me, you know, quiz him again at the press conference around this, but he's never going to sit there and say to me, this guy isn't good enough. He isn't training at the standard that the others are. He doesn't deserve to be in the squad. He's never going to say it like that, because Liverpool need to sell him clearly. But I think, you know, it's not even reading between the lines. It's quite obvious what is going on at the moment. He is not training to the standard or playing to the standard of the others around him, despite those players having issues, by the way. We're talking about Jota's form and Núñez and Gakpo. He's still not kind of getting there. So you just have to accept it. And like I say, it's the decision of a manager who has not got an awful lot wrong this season. So you're probably best to kind of trust that judgment.
It does seem crazy that Liverpool's attack is faltering a bit. It's fair to say that at the moment, despite the fact we're getting the results. For all that, Chiesa isn't even getting in the squad, the 20-man squad. I think that tells you probably everything you really need to know.